domestic, international, you can you may be stopped and they may remove these from your persons before you get to the terminal, and you can only buy them after you check in and crap like that. But I think it's very interesting that we rely on these. On the right is a check and deposit bag that is used by a lot of banks. The one in the picture is actually a Bank of America bag, but there's a lot that are almost extremely similar. And you just throw your cash in, then seal it up, and then obviously if someone wants to steal it, they're just going to steal the whole damn thing, and it's not going to matter. But if somebody tries to take a portion of it, they have to figure out how to get that out and then reseal it without leaving evidence. Now obviously the missing cash may be evidence, but think of if we want to transport sensitive documents or company secrets and so on and so forth in these. I gotta stop saying so on and so forth, don't I? We also use these to seal evidence bags. Similar to the plastic bag here on the right, there's a lot of evidence bags that look the same. This is just a manila folder with some evidence tape over the edges, but we use these pretty heavily for this kind of stuff. We started using these not too long ago in electronics. So all these sites like Hackaday that people are like, oh my god, I got the latest new iPhone awesome version, holy shit. And I took it all apart and then I reprogrammed it so that titties appear when I boot up or whatever. and so companies are actively trying to stop that, stop reverse engineering of their products, stop modification. Again, we could go back to Xboxes and stuff where they don't want you to mod it or do anything against what they want you to do with it. So they started making both tamper-evident and tamper-resistant electronics. So in the photo is just this little chip, and all the leads are coated in a thin layer of epoxy. So if you wanted to remove this chip or get access to the leads, you'd have to remove that and then figure out how to repair it. You could go hardcore and become the government, where you just coat the whole damn thing in epoxy, the entire PCB. So you just have, it's essentially just a little black box at that point, where you don't really know what it does, but it just plugs in somewhere, and then hopefully it works. It's used a lot on little DRM chips too, and military crypto electronics. A lot of these are also tamper-resistant, where they destroy themselves if they detect tampering and so on. How many of you have a BlackBerry or an iPhone? If you take off the back right now, you can see a little white seals, and some of them are water sensors, and some of them are little covers for the screws, so that if you wanted to take your device apart, you'd have to remove all those little stickers or break them when you put the screwdriver in. So all these are little warranty protection type things. The water sensors don't really evidence tampering so much, since the only thing they do is detect water, right? Or other types of liquids, but for the most part, just water. So a lot of people ask me, well, what about tilt sensors on packaging? Like you send a crate and you put a tilt sensor in it. That's kind of a tamper-evident device, but that's more of a cover-your-ass device. So if something happens in transit, then you could say, well, the tilt sensor went off, so this must have happened. How many of you have to take a piss test for work? Funny story, in the contest this year, there was a medicine bottle that looked pretty similar. And I filled it with apple juice, and there's a picture of me drinking it like that. Yeah. And another team used Jack and water that looked a lot like pee, too. I don't know what's with us and pee, but let's stop talking about pee. Anyways, we use these for a lot of medical type stuff. So specimen containers, and you can see the blood vials in the center, and then even some more expensive medicine bottles will actually have a tamper-evident seal, so that you have to physically break it. And it's not like the normal seals, like the one on the left here, or the normal kind of water bottle seal. It's meant to not be able to go back to the way it was. You all have gas, water, and power. All of your little meters have little tamper seals on them. And they're just these little tiny plastic things. And again, tamper-evident things don't resist force. You can just snap these off with your fingers. It's just a little piece of plastic. But if it's gone, the next time the guy comes to check your meter, he files a report saying something may have been tampered with. And then they choose to investigate or not. For cargo transportation, we use more heavy-duty seals for the most part. We'll talk about different types of seals in a bit, but these are called bolt seals. And they're essentially just a one-way lock that snap through the hasp of a truck. The IAEA does treaty monitoring for North Korea, and this is an example of a cup seal that they use. And so this half of the cup seal is actually not unique. So you could technically replace it with one of the same size and the same hole diameter and the same hole position. But what they do is they take a knife and they scratch it up in here, and they add little dabs of solder. and then they take a picture of it. They seal it up. The next time they come, they inspect the outside. When they're ready to remove the seal, they cut it open and look at this and compare it with the picture to determine if it's been tampered with. This is a photo of Marines sealing a can of nuclear material with just a little tamper seal. And if you remember back to our evidence slide, this is essentially that same little red adhesive just being applied to the nuclear container. So, as with most security products, there's a lot of bullshit. So one thing I found really funny is that everyone who sells zip ties markets them as tamper-proof. And I thought that was pretty funny. Now, how many of you are uncomfortable opening a zip tie? Did not think so. What if it's a pulled tight zip tie? A little more tricky, huh? Step it up. There's also dedicated tamper companies, and most of them represent their products as being more secure than they really are. And that was one of the motivations for DT starting the contest last year and continuing it on this year and next year. So you'll see it's just a little sticker similar to our Microsoft warranty sticker. When you pull it up, it just says void. And the wording to the right says impossible to reseal or reuse. Another one is these little metal padlock security seals, which sounds very intimidating. But it's essentially just this little frangible, is that a word? We'll find out later. It's just this little shackle that fits through the body and it snaps into place. And it says positively tamper-proof. We'll get back to him later. So, what makes something tamper-evident, right? Is a water bottle tamper-evident? Is an envelope tamper-evident? You know, all these things. Yeah, but are they designed to be such? So something that's tamper-evident should be durable to everything. I'm going to try walking around. We'll see how it works. Something that's tamper-evident should be durable, but it should be weak. It should not resist physical attacks, right? It should be a one-way lock mechanism. There's extremely few seals that are actually resealable. Because, you know, think if it's resealable, it's essentially a lock that you can lock and unlock at will, given the right tools and skill and all that sort of stuff. Tamper seals usually have unique identifiers to prevent you from just swapping one out and counterfeiting it. And they're sensitive to basically everything other than a tug test. And so what a tug test is where you seal your seal, and we'll talk about this particular seal in a second. You seal it up, and then you just pull it, right? So we know it's locked. So what if I pulled it and it snapped, right? If I'm just pulling lightly, then that may evidence tampering, right? And they're also should be very weak to things like temperature or different chemicals and so on and so forth. So how do we inspect tamper seals? And this is a talk all on its own, but we just look at them casually. I go, oh, and then you can look at them closely and see if there's any little scratches or missing pieces. You can also disassemble them if they are disassemblable. And then you can get to serious science where, you know, you're saying what trace evidence is on the seal. Are there fingerprints there? Are there hair and fiber? That kind of stuff. And then there's also seals that have traps or alarms. So think of an example of a trap would be, what the fuck was that? An example of a trap would be like the little ink things when you go to the department store and all the clothes you want to buy have the ink things. So if you try and remove that, it sprays ink everywhere. And so that's considered a trap. An alarm's more like when you're in the same department store and you just try to walk out and the siren goes off. So what does defeating a seal mean? So this is kind of ambiguous. Defeating a seal doesn't mean just pulling it apart, because it's pretty easy just to pull most of these apart. So by defeating it, we mean that we open it and we reseal it, which sometimes is the harder part, and we leave little to no evidence of tampering, as little as possible. So there's vulnerabilities kind of everywhere. So we can think of there's problems with the design, something that the end user just can't fix. There's problems with procuring seals. So what if I start a malicious tamper seal company that sells flawed seals, right? And you buy seals from me. What about storage of your seals? If somebody has access to your seals before you install them, can they be tampered with and then made vulnerable to different attacks? What about installation? You can definitely install a lot of these wrong to reduce the security they offer. And then, of course, the biggest thing is the human element. You know, to identify tampering, you need to have somebody actually look at it. There's no good automated way to do it. Now you can say, of course, we have electronic tamper seals that will alarm and do that kind of stuff. But that kind of stuff tends to make us lazy. And so we just need to say, you know, when the guy pushes the button to see if it's been tampered with, it tells him no. And there's a lot of ways we can fake that. And then think about also how you remove or dispose of the old seals when you pull them off the container when they get to their destination. If you just kind of throw them in the dumpster out back, can somebody go through them and get parts or get materials from that would allow them to better tamper the seals that you're using still? So the first thing we're going to talk about is called mechanical seals. And these are little plastic and metal type seals that physically prevent you from doing what you want. So think of it like a little hasp on a door, and we have this little tiny tamper seal around it. To open the door, you need to break this seal, in theory. So zip ties, seriously, zip ties. We're not joking when I say zip ties are a basic tamper-evident seal. Again, show of hands, how many people are worried about a zip tie? Fully sealed zip tie? Those are tricky. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the beaded cable seal, and I have one here. You want to pass it around? Wow, that was off. Well, I'll seal it for you. And, you know, just pull on it lightly, see how it feels. Don't tighten it too much, but play with them, see how they feel. And essentially, it's just this little cable that fits through the body, and once you push it through enough, it locks into place. So it's basically a fancy zip tie. How confident are you that you could beat this now? One guy? Jeez. I thought you guys were pros who had like the whole fully locked zip tie thing down. So I tried to do this earlier when I was drunk and I ripped the shim, but you can essentially just put a little Coke can through there and get it around the cable, and you push in, and then once you get it through, you're essentially doing the same thing with a zip tie where you're separating the teeth from the cable, and then you can just pull it back out. And there's a lot of these seals, and they look different now and then, but they're essentially the same thing. Right? They're just these little plastic or metal pieces, and you snap them together, and they're glorified zip ties. Some are two-sided, some are four-sided, some have two rows with a divider in the middle, so you got to shim both of them. And again, shimming is not the only defeat. Think of, you know, a lot of these don't have serial numbers. Can we just swap in another one of the same color, of the same model? Lots and lots of different defeats. So again, go back to, you know, our list of different places we can attack them, and just think of all the different things we could do to these basic little seals. Next type of seal we're going to talk about is called the plunger seal. Now, one thing I should mention is that all the companies that sell these have really tarded names for them, so they all call them truck seal. So it makes it really hard to talk to somebody and say, hey, you know that truck seal? And they're like, oh, which of the 5,000 are we talking about? So I call them just kind of how they interlock, because it's easier for me. And hopefully I'll just give enough talks that everybody else starts using the terminology. But it's essentially just this little piece that snaps in. So it's similar to our little cable seal, but it covers the piece that we would want to manipulate. And you can see that the little flanges here kind of prevent you from sticking something in and pushing those little legs back. But on most of these, they're capped. So the way that they seal this is that they form the body, they put the little white piece in, the detainer, and then they cap it, right? And then whenever you're ready, you just snap it into place. So I don't know why that slide's there, but okay. So you can actually take caps from other ones, and you could just pull the caps from existing ones just using a little screw. You just screw it in there and pull it out. Sometimes you could use heat or boiling water to make it easier, but you could just pop that out and then put a new one in there, and no one's the wiser. And once you have the cap out, you have, you know, full access to the internals, so it becomes a zip tie again. And so you can see here in the photo, for our team, we have a big box of different little caps ready to go, so it saves us time when we want to do defeats. We just pop the existing one out and then pick the right color. And, you know, if we damage the white part in any way, it's hard to see, but it's right here. If we damage that, we just pop a new one in, because they're all the same too. And none of these little pieces are serialized or unique. So there's other little plunger seals that are pretty common as well. Again, these are used a lot by the utility companies, and they're essentially just the same thing. They're just a different little format. And you can see the one on the left doesn't even have a serial number. So if we find the same type of seal with a serial number, can we print a new one on it because we have blank ones? Sure, why not? The padlock seals are called so because they resemble padlocks, and they're kind of nifty. The one on the left just uses little spring-loaded detainers that shoot out when you push the shackle in. So you could think, can I shim that? Can I just put a